I want to be upfront about something. I'm genuinely quite new to this whole thought leadership thing, putting myself out there on YouTube, building an audience, all of that. It's not a world that I've spent an enormous amount of time in. But I've spent enough time on LinkedIn to know what I don't want to be part of. And you will have seen the content. It's the kind of the former Fortune 500 executive turned coach who's finally found their passion, the morning routine that unlocks peak performance, 7 steps framework for going from $0 to $1 million. Every other post promising a shortcut to something that actually doesn't work that way. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that if you're watching this, the content also makes you cringe a little, and maybe even more than a little. What I'm building here is not this type of channel. This is for executives who spend 20 or 30 years actually building things inside real institutions and to want to build something of their own now without being talked down to or sold a shortcut. No hacks, no shortcuts, no cheerleading. That's my promise. What you need is architecture. And the first piece of that architecture for me, the one that almost everyone gets wrong, including people who should really know better, is positioning. And probably including yourself. So let me ask you something. Imagine a senior executive who you've never met calls you tomorrow. Somebody who's heard your name from a mutual contact. And they ask the obvious question. So, what do you do? What would you actually say? Here's what I hear every time almost. And when I ask that question to somebody who's recently left a senior corporate role, they're smart enough not to lead with their old title. So they're not saying, oh, I was a CFO. That sounds like a CV entry. And they know that doesn't get you hired. So instead they say something like, oh, I'm helping businesses with everything finance related. And then because they can feel that lands a bit flat, they add, I've spent 15 years as a CFO at Procter & Gamble or whatever, and I can really bring all of that experience to my clients now. And the person on the other hand says, oh, that's great, sounds interesting, and moves on. And here's the thing, that answer isn't wrong, the experience is real and the intention is right, but it's just not useful. Everything finance related isn't a positioning, right? It's a department. It tells me roughly where you've worked in the past, not what problem you're actually solving. And that credential line, 15 years, Procter & Gamble or whatever the institution was, that's exactly the right information. It's just being delivered in completely the wrong order. You're leading with the past when the other person needs to hear first, what actually changes in my business if I bring that person in? The reason this happens, and it's not about intelligence or self-awareness, the people I'm describing are often really sharp, is that for the last 20 or 30 years, you never had to answer this question. Your corporate role came with a positioning system already built in. The title told the room what authority you carried, the brand told them what credibility you were backed by, the institution was doing all of the heavy lifting every time you walked in the door, without you having to think about it for a second. And then you left, and the system stayed behind. Because it was never yours, it belonged to the institution. And now, for the first time, you're in a market that doesn't know your history, doesn't know what you're capable of, and needs to understand why you're the right person in about 30 seconds. In 20 years of watching senior executives try to figure this out, there are 3 positioning mistakes that come up again and again, and I mean almost every time. A, describing the category, not the outcome. This is the big one. Everything finance related, management consulting, strategy, operations, those are categories. They tell me roughly which shelf of the library you're on. They don't tell me what specific problem you solve and what actually changes in my world when I bring you in. A potential client isn't buying a category, they're buying a specific answer to a specific problem they're dealing with right now. Until your positioning names that problem clearly, they're not really in the conversation with you. Mistake number 2, keeping it broad to keep your options open. Look, I completely understand that logic, right? If I describe myself narrowly, won't I miss out on work I could have done? In practice, it works exactly the other way around. When your positioning is too broad, people can't picture what you do clearly enough to refer you. And referrals are how most independent practices actually grow. Being specific feels risky. Being vague actually is the risk. The executives who narrow their positioning almost always find that the work expands naturally around them. The narrowing is precisely what makes it easy to refer. Number 3 is positioning for the wrong audience. Some executives built their story for the audience that felt most impressive inside their corporate world, not the audience who's actually going to hire them. They write copy that would land really well with the CEO of a global business, when their most natural client is actually a founder-led company who've never had access to somebody at their level. The gap between who I want to be known by and who is actually going to pay me is where a lot of that first-year frustration quietly lives. The 3 mistakes in positioning, all 3 on the surface different, but they're really all the same thing underneath. You're still positioning as an employee, I think, not as somebody who solves a specific problem in the marketplace. So what does it actually look like when you get this right? Strong positioning for an independent senior executive answers 3 questions in 1 sentence in language that a potential client can immediately act on. What specific problem do I solve? For whom? And why you? Very specifically. Not your whole career, please. Not your range of capabilities. Just the one thing that you want to be the first name somebody thinks of when that problem walks through their door. Let me show you what the difference looks like in practice. So same person, same 15 years as a CFO experience, let's say, and 2 very different ways of talking about your position. Version number 1, I'm helping businesses with everything finance related. I've spent 15 years as a CFO at company X, and I can really bring all of that experience to my SME clients today. Version number 2, I help founder-led businesses get ready for institutional investment. I usually come in 12 to 18 months before they need to go through a funding round or are looking to exit with private equity. Same person, same experience. I think completely different reaction. Version 1 will get you a polite nod and kind of changing subject. Version 2 hopefully gets you, actually, let me introduce you to somebody who this may be really interesting for. So I think being specific is what creates what I call referability, right? And referability is what's going to build your practice. Here's the exercise I would like you to work on when you think about your positioning. Take a blank piece of paper or open your Notes app or whatever works for you and write down the answer to this very simple thing. I help, and insert type of client, to a specific outcome by doing something very specific, and write your approach. Don't write your whole career history, please. Don't list your capabilities. Try to answer it from the other side of the table. What actually changes in someone's world because you exist? And then, and this is the important bit, say it out loud to somebody who doesn't know your background. Maybe say it to your spouse first and watch their face, but then do it with other people too. And if you get a kind of a blank look, it's not quite there yet, right? If they say, interesting, I might actually know someone, you're getting close. If it's longer than 1 sentence, you're not done yet. Positioning isn't just a marketing exercise. It is the foundation of your entire practice. If you get it right, the conversations you have start to feel different. They're going to be more specific, more useful, more likely to go somewhere. If you get it wrong, you can work incredibly hard and still wonder why nothing really is building. Positioning is the first component of what I call the second curve architecture. That's the full framework I have built from 20 years and over 1,000 executives navigating this transition. Complete video is on this channel and the link is in the description. You need to get your positioning right. Everything else gets easier from there. So I'll see you in the next video.